Resumed. It's time for questions to the Minister for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs. Question 8 and 5 have been withdrawn. I called, no, Tom's not here. Timothy Galston. Minister.
The Lochs Agency has a clear statutory remit and delivers a necessary public function on a cross-border basis. The performance of the agency is evaluated in line with the agreed framework document, and a review of its performance is published in the Lochs Agency Annual Report and Accounts. In terms of value for money, I take assurance from the governance arrangements in place for the agency and the oversight from my department.
Mr. Galston.
Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answer. Recent questions from myself have exposed the fact that the Lochs Agency maintained 3 boardrooms, secured 0 prosecutions for illegal netting in 2022 and 2024, and very low numbers in other recent years. The commercial salmon fishery has been suspended for many years, yet the department that once regulated this has a wage bill for 2024 of almost £1 million and other costs that year of over £500,000. Minister, isn't it the case that even by the low bar of cross-border bodies, it's hard to justify the existence of the Lochs Agency?
I strongly believe in the value of the Lochs Agency. I strongly believe in the value of cross-border working. I have responded in detail to the written questions the member has tabled to me. In relation to the prosecutions issues that you have raised, the agency has a statutory duty to protect the fisheries of the Foyle and Carlingford areas, and dealing with illegal nets is only one part of the remit of the agency's Conservation and Protection Directorate. The Conservation and Protection Directorate operates a hotline which the public can use to report suspected pollution events or illegal fishing activity. Staff members are on call to respond 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. In 2024, the agency inspected over 1,600 fishing licences, detected 133 illegal fishing incidents, and dealt with 216 pollution incidents. It has also successfully prosecuted 85 offenders for water quality offences and 111 offenders for angling-related offences since 2015. The key objective of this directorate is to provide a highly visible, public-facing approach to enforcement, to act as a deterrent to illegal activity taking place in the first place. In relation to the boardrooms, which Mr Gaston seems to have an interest in, the agency can hold meetings at its headquarters and also its 2 regional offices. These meeting rooms are used extensively outside of board meetings to support the day-to-day running of the agency.
Philip Brett.
Cross-border bodies seem to have a particular issue in having their annual accounts produced and laid in this Assembly on time. Can the Minister outline what work he is doing to ensure the Lochs Agency complies with its statutory guidance?
Thank you, Mr Breton. I think it is important that they are laid on time. I think having these institutions back is important. There's a lot of catching up to do from previous situations where this Assembly didn't sit, and it's something I'm engaging with the Lochs Agency as is importance in terms of ensuring that we keep to a proper procedure.
John Blair.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answers and detail given so far. Can I ask him how he's working not only with the Lochs Agency as a cross-border body, but also with his counterparts in the Republic of Ireland to improve water quality in Northern Ireland?
So my department cooperates with counterparts in Ireland to improve water quality through the North-South Ministerial Council areas of cooperation, such as environment, and also through the Lochs Agency as an implementation body. The Lochs Agency is currently collaborating with East Border Region and Inland Fisheries Ireland, as well as AFBI, Ulster University, and Armagh City, Banbridge and Craigavon Borough Council in Northern Ireland on the new Peace Plus funded CAM project, which will see a range of actions to improve water quality implemented on several cross-border catchments, including the rivers Struil and Finn. I also note the recent commitment within the new Irish Government's Programme for Government in terms of water quality, and I'm engaging with the Government. I had a meeting with Darragh O'Brien just recently, and I'm having further meetings with other ministers about how we can implement that for the benefits of all the people across the island of Ireland.
Stephen Dunn.
Mr Speaker.
Minister.
121 schools and 1,701 parents or guardians responded to the survey, which closed on the 10th of January of this year. Responses are currently being analysed and a report is being finalised in the coming weeks. The information generated from the survey, together with engagement with key stakeholders, will form part of an ongoing review of the scheme. Options to refresh the scheme will be taken forward as part of the Northern Ireland Food Strategy Framework Action Plan, which I intend to publish at the Balmoral Show, which I'm looking forward to because it's next week.
Mr Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the Minister for his answer. You mentioned when you launching this late last year about the participation in the scheme declining. I would be keen to hear what actions you propose to address this decline, and can you secure and inform us that the future of this scheme is indeed secure?
So I'm very keen to keep this scheme. When I was at primary school, I was one of the people involved in selling the milk, so I've got a background in this. I think it's a real great value for nutrition for young people, and what I want to do is consider the outcome from the survey so we can see better ways to promote uptake and to increase uptake. Indications from the survey that was undertaken whilst we're still going through it are that there is support for the scheme, with the majority of schools indicating that the scheme offers good value for money, with the majority of parents believing it is an important scheme and that milk provides a range of nutritional benefits for their children's diet and development. And as I've said previously, I am in support of this, and we look forward to taking forward actions to promote it as part of the Northern Ireland Food Strategy Framework Action Plan.
Sean Mahoney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Minister. I'm just wondering if you can elaborate slightly on how the school milk subsidy scheme helps to deliver upon those strategic priorities outlined in the Northern Ireland Food Strategy Framework.
Thank you, Shannon. As I said, we're going to be launching the Food Strategy Framework Action Plan. We're probably going to develop an acronym for that, but launching that at the Balmoral Show next week, because it's really important that we follow on from actually launching the strategy. And one of the key priorities within that is to enable improved dietary-related health outcomes through education. The framework focuses on making healthy, nutritious and sustainable food the food of choice. The framework recognises the importance of a healthy, balanced diet at all stages of life. This is particularly the case for children, as it impacts their growth and development, educational attainment and long-term health and well-being. Intervening early in life to create healthy eating habits helps us give children and young people the best start in life by embedding a positive relationship with food. For this reason, I intend to ensure that the school milk subsidy scheme is refreshed as part of the Food Strategy Framework Action Plan targets over the next 2 years.
Robbie Butler.
Speaker, thanks to the Minister for recognising and stating that the uptake has been lower. The dairy industry and indeed the scheme suffers from insidious advertising by groups like Viva, which is one of the leading vegan charities, who launched a video called Dairy is Scary. Would the Minister join with me in condemning such applications of advertising and outline what steps the Department are going to take to promote milk as a healthy food supplement?
So we'll do that next week at the Balmoral Show. Dairy is not scary for me. It's healthy and nutritious. It's something I enjoy as part of my daily diet. And next week is a great opportunity in the Balmoral Show to showcase the excellent quality food that we have here in Northern Ireland, not just to people from Northern Ireland, but on a wider platform. And I think it's important that we do that. We should be very proud of those standards. But can I also say something else that I have written to the UK government around my concerns around any potential trade deal with the United States of America? We should not be undercutting our farmers in the UK. We've got good quality food, and we want to be able to protect that industry, and we want to be able to sell that to a wider market.
Maura Hunter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, will you commit to ensuring that any changes to the scheme do not disproportionately affect either low-income families or rural schools?
That would be one of my main concerns, and you've rightly highlighted that, and that's something that we want to make sure that we don't do that, and we'll engage with, as part of the co-design process going forward, because we want to make sure that actually the outcomes are that it benefits rural areas and that people who are less well off, and I think it's important we do that.
Patsy Malone.
Question number 4.
Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I will group questions 4 and question 14 together. The recent spate of wildfire incidents is very concerning, as wildfires not only have the potential to have devastating impacts on the environment, but they are also a risk to life, homes and farms. We must all unite to strongly condemn the actions of the individuals who have been starting these fires. I would urge anyone with any information about those who were involved in these activities to contact the police. I'd also like to pay tribute and special thanks to the Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service for all the work that they've been doing, and myself and the Health Minister were with them last week in terms of the Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service to give thanks for the work that they do, and I want to put it on record here again today. To try to prevent wildfires and reduce their impact when they do occur, my department works with others, most especially the Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service. Tackling and preventing wildfires requires close working across government and beyond to tackle these deliberate acts of rural arson. Working together, we issue communications highlighting the risk of wildfires and actions that should be taken to prevent them. We've made available the departmental specialist wildfire vehicles for use by the Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service during the wildfire incidents. We also seek to develop wildfire management plans in high-risk areas or designated sites. In addition to this, my officials continue to work with key partners in the Fire and Rescue Service and the Department of Health to finalise a robust, cross-cutting and effective strategy to address the scourge of wildfires in the medium and long term.
Mr Malone.
Thanks very much, Minister, for your answer. Minister, you refer specifically there to deliberate acts of rural arson. Have all those fires been attributed to that cause? In fact, are they all deliberate arson attacks, or are there some of those that have been otherwise? And has it been determined what percentage is what?
So my engagement with the Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service has been that the overwhelming majority of these have been deliberately set. It's only by the grace of God that no one's been killed here in Northern Ireland as a result of these fires. And I would urge anyone who has any information to pass that on to the police. The work that Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service have undertaken in recent weeks in responding to this has been significant. And I really want to praise them for the work that they've been doing in very, very difficult circumstances. But we have to be very clear around our attitudes towards these fires, that they're not something that we should just see as headlines that come and go. They're something that we need to have a different attitude towards. And we need to have an attitude that if we know anyone who was lighting these fires, we have to contact the police and we have to be prepared to give evidence to take it to court. That's absolutely key. Whilst I'm working with the Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service and the Department of Health in terms of a strategy, that's a medium and long-term issue. What we do really need is a different attitude towards these issues, which are having a devastating impact upon our countryside. And some of the scenes are really, they're very distressing, to be honest, to see the damage that we've caused to our countryside.
Keith Buchanan.
Thank you, Minister, for the first answer. Minister, what more do you think you could do from an educational point of view, PR, etc., or across the media? And I'm not only talking about young people, because it's not only young people that's doing this, it's older people as well, but what more do you think you do from an educational point of view to give people an input of what actually happens when they do these stupid acts?
So the media have been profiling this very strongly. And obviously I was with Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service in Ballinhinch and Lisburn last week, and we put out media subsequent to that to raise the profile of the practical implications around this. But I think we all have a role as elected representatives to really profile those communications and to encourage people with any information to bring it forward to the police, because we need prosecutions around this. We need to see people in court, but that requires people who are prepared to give evidence in relation to this. We also need to be conscious that what people may see as a very localised fire can very quickly spread and can have a devastating consequence. So people need to be very conscious of their behaviour in the countryside around this, because we've seen other parts of the world where people have lost their lives, and that's my concern around this.
Anya Murphy.
I'd like to thank the Minister for his answers thus far. Minister, what engagement to date have you had with local farmers, given the fact that they can indeed help prevent and manage these fires?
The Department has been previously engaged in relation to specific forums around this. We intend to re-establish that as part of the strategy associated with this, because it's important that we engage with people around this. There will be a consultation and engagement around the prescribed burning period. I've been on the record in the belief that we should review that, and I would welcome people's engagement in the consultation surrounding that, because it's important we also have a proper informed discussion around the arrangements in place. We're very conscious in the Republic of Ireland that prescribed burning period ends 6 weeks before what we do, and also the penalties associated with that are much more different, and that's something I want to engage with, particularly the farming community on.
Rick Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, the Minister. To ask the Minister how re-wetting peatlands can help control the spread of landscape fires in the Mournes.
Thank you very much, Andy, and I think this is a really important issue, because re-wetting of peatlands leads to improvements in the water table height, which increases wetness and growth of key plants, which then naturally limit the dominance of shrubs, heather, grasses which favour drier conditions and burn more readily. A water table which sits at or close to the peat surface also limits the capacity of uncontrolled fires to burn into the peat layer and smoulder less, leading to less severe fires. And I think this is quite an important question you've raised, because also I have a peatland strategy which is now with the Executive for approval, and what we need to do is we need to restore our peatlands across Northern Ireland, and that can contribute towards so much in Northern Ireland, particularly in relation to the issues that we're discussing here today. So let's do that. Let's move forward to improve our environment, and let's prevent these wildfires occurring in our countryside.
McDonald's.
Question number 5.
Minister.
I'm very aware of the impact of sewage pollution has upon water quality. The Northern Ireland Environment Agency undertakes an extensive water quality monitoring programme within Northern Ireland's rivers and lakes. Northern Ireland Environment Agency's river water body monitoring indicates that 53% of river water bodies are impacted by agriculture-related pressures and 25% by sewage-related pressures. The percentage include a significant number of water bodies, which is 21%, which are impacted by both sewage and agricultural pressures. The research led by AFBI and published in October 2020 examined substance flow analysis for phosphorus in Northern Ireland's food system. Of the estimated 1,530 tonnes of phosphorus lost to water, 62% was determined to be from agricultural sources, 36% from sewage, of which 24% was attributed to wastewater, and a further 12% to septic tanks. The Improved Environmental Improvement Plan for Northern Ireland sets out my commitment to improving water quality in Northern Ireland, including the requirement to publish the third cycle River Basin Management Plan and associated programme of measures. Work to improve water quality will require collective action across government, the public and private sectors, and wider society.
I call Mr. McDonald's.
Thank you, Minister, for that thorough response. Can you provide an update on regulation and enforcement arrangements regarding sewage pollution by Northern Ireland Water?
To answer that question in a number of ways. The third cycle River Basin Management Plan is with the Executive. It's been with the Executive for a while for approval, and I will continue to engage with my Executive colleagues in relation to that. The other issue, and if members bear with me around this and explain this a bit more, when NI Water was established in 2007, there was a Statement of Regulatory Principles and Intent put in place. The acronym for that is SORPI. And that's been in place since then. A number of years ago, the area around drinking water was the Northern Ireland Environment Agency exited from that. And what people have to understand is that in terms of SORPI, essentially what that means is that when taking into account regulation or enforcement against NI Water for sewage pollution, the historic underinvestment that has taken place has to be taken into account in that regard. So in many instances, Northern Ireland Water is getting a buy ball for pumping sewage into our waterways. I don't think that's tenable. And I will, as Minister, be honest and fair to all polluters in Northern Ireland. And that's why I am engaging in a formal process to get the views from NI Water and DFI in relation to us exiting that arrangement and to put in Northern Ireland Water on the same platform as all other polluters in Northern Ireland. I will make a final decision in relation to that in the forthcoming weeks, but I just don't think it's tenable that Northern Ireland Water are treated differently than other polluters. They're a corporate polluter and they should be treated like that.
Matthew O'Toole.
So, Minister, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, you've said your views around NI Water and SORPI, but you've also said in the past that you want to give the Infrastructure Minister and her predecessor time and space, effectively, to come up with a funding solution. They've had time, they've had space, there is no funding solution, and there appears to be head stuck in the sand. What pressure are you bringing to bear on the Infrastructure Minister to actually come up with a plan to invest in NI Water? Because this is quite literally getting worse. Our water is in crisis. What pressure are you bringing to bear on your ministerial colleague?
So I've been on the record previously that I would support the Infrastructure Minister in funding bids for Northern Ireland Water, and that's the kind of person I am in terms of supporting that investment that needs to be taking place. The pressure that I am bringing to bear is in relation to the regulation and enforcement arrangements for Northern Ireland Water, as I have outlined in regards to that setup that's been in place since 2007. I don't think it's tenable to have that in place. I don't believe that NI Water in its current state is fit for purpose. I think that what's happening here in Northern Ireland in relation to sewage pollution in our waterways is nothing short of a thunder and disgrace. I think it's wrong. We have Belfast Lough, which is very likely to become the next Lough Neagh in Northern Ireland because the level of pollution that is occurring. And the lack of investment in wastewater infrastructure is not just holding back economic investment and house building, but it's also destroying our environment. And we can't continue to kick a can down the road. It's for others to step up and take decisions in this.
Alan Chambers.
Minister, would you share my disappointment that there's not one specific mention in the programme for government that suggests any solutions to tackle the pollution in Belfast Lough? As we know, we both realise it is the next Lough Neagh.
Within the programme for government, it sets out a number of areas of commitments, one of them which is in relation to improving the environment. Within the Environmental Improvement Plan, we have a number of actions that I'm seeking to take as Minister. What clearly is required in relation to wastewater infrastructure is investment. The Northern Ireland Audit Office has set out their views in relation to that, and I think it would do well for people to pay heed to those.
Philip Brett.
Mr. Speaker.
The bill is within the legislative competence of the Assembly, and I'm seeking approval for the introduction of the bill at the earliest available opportunity from my executive colleagues. Once executive approval is received, I will seek to have the bill introduced with the Speaker's agreement as soon as possible.
Mr. Brett.
Mr. Speaker, dilapidation not only impacts on our town centres but also within our communities. In my constituency in Lower North Belfast, communities of Skegnale, Shore Road and Jellicoe are blighted by Japanese knotweed being placed on unregistered and unowned land. Can the Minister give an assurance that he will try to get this bill brought to this House as soon as possible to ensure residents not only in North Belfast but across Northern Ireland benefit from these new provisions?
Minister.
Yes, I'm very keen to see this bill on the floor of this Assembly. When we were placed here and returned back in 2022, so I think it's just about the anniversary of that election, we were very much clear that the public wanted us to deliver for them, and the dilapidation bill is a key tool that we'd be able to do that. The dilapidation in areas has a real blight upon those communities. It affects the neighbourhood, it affects the lack of investment in the area, and that's very, very keen to have it tabled. What we've got is a bill which has been fully reviewed in terms of its competence and the legal perspectives in relation to that. Hopefully we get approval from the Executive and we'll get it here and we'll be able to debate it, and also then the committee can scrutinise it, because I think it will be a positive thing for all communities across Northern Ireland, but most particularly some of the constituencies that you, to be fair, you've been a strong advocate for this bill, so let's get it onto the floor of the Assembly.
Donny Donnelly.
And thanks to the Minister for his answer so far. Like the previous member, dilapidated buildings are a blight in our towns and villages, including in East Antrim, so I'm keen to see this progress. I'd like to ask the Minister how this bill will enable councils to take action to protect our built heritage.
So this will have a particular impact in relation to that, because during the policy consultation, stakeholders expressed concerns that under existing legislation there was no special consideration or protection afforded to listed buildings and no requirement to consult with planning colleagues prior to issuing of notices. It was suggested by stakeholders that this had resulted in the loss of a number of buildings, where buildings were allowed to fall into disrepair by owners. We have sought to ensure that in the bill, protections will be afforded in respect of listed buildings, and this will be binding upon councils to consult with relevant planning colleagues before taking any action. This will properly address heritage issues and be more proactive, allowing actions to be taken at a much earlier stage, thereby preventing avoidable decay in these important buildings. I would add that councils currently have powers under Section 161 of the Planning Act 2011 to carry out urgent remedial works for the preservation of a listed building. I would also declare, for the record, I am a member of the Ulster Architectural Heritage Society.
Minister, thank you for the answer to that question. Minister, I hope you'll agree with me that the track record of this place in looking after our built heritage has been abysmal. In fact, in recent questions I've raised with the Minister for Communities, it turns out that there's no level of funding to support owners of listed buildings to help restore or make safe those buildings. And in fact, if you delve further into it, Minister, you'll find that there's a very minimal fund, I think of about £300,000, that entire section is supposed to deal with. Minister, what are you doing to work with the Minister for Communities to ensure that we protect our built heritage, which is falling down around us on a daily basis?
Minister.
So I'm very conscious of the issues you raise. I'm very supportive of built heritage. That's why I'm a member of Ulster Architectural Heritage Society. By tabling this bill, hopefully we'll be able to progress some things from my department around this. I'm conscious of the issues in your constituency, particularly in Sime Mills, for example. These are important buildings that we want to protect, and I will continue to work with my executive colleagues to get this bill onto the floor of the Assembly. But also there's a role of district councils, because district councils already have powers around this. Sometimes they're reluctant to use them. I remember in my time in Ards and North Down Borough Council, there's a number of listed buildings that we sort of had to, lobby for action to be taken, but we got it taken, and it requires perseverance around this. But once the building's gone, it's gone. We've lost that key fabric in that local community, and that's why I'm very keen to progress this bill.
Colin McGrath.
Question number 7, Mr. Speaker.
My department carried out the most current official assessment of bathing water sites in Northern Ireland during the 2024 bathing season. The bathing season runs from the 1st of June to the 15th of September. During this period, weekly monitoring and assessments were carried out at 26 identified bathing water and 17 candidate bathing water sites. I'm pleased to report that Northern Ireland's bathing waters performed well. All 26 identified bathing waters complied with the required bathing water quality standards. 22 were classified as excellent, a prerequisite for the coveted Blue Flag Award and an indication of highest water quality standard. 2 met the good standard, and the remaining 2 met the sufficient standard. 7 candidate bathing waters were also monitored in 2024. The classification for these sites is preliminary and currently based upon 2 years of data. 1 site was classified as excellent, 2 as good, 3 as sufficient, and 1 as poor. It should be noted that the addition of a second year of samples in 2024 led to some improvements in classification at these candidate sites, and a full 4-year data set is required to classify with confidence. It is my intention to formally identify these 7 candidate sites before the commencement of the 2025 bathing season. My department publishes the results of all identified and candidate bathing waters on the DAERA and Northern Ireland Direct websites.
McGrath.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, given the popularity of sea swimming and the significant disparities in the levels of potential faecal contamination at bathing water sites across the north, with no more than 17 CFU, the measurement at Trella, up to 690 at Crawfordsburn, up to 1,900 at Warrenpoint, and up to 6,100 in Brompton in your own constituency, will you commit to commission a review of the bathing water regulations as recommended by the Office for Environmental Protection?
Minister.
So I'm very conscious of the issue you outlined, that there's very different situations with regards to water quality in different bathing areas. You also know it's a very popular sport that people are undertaking. I undertook it at Christmas Eve, and I think I'll stick to the running. That's my focus. But what we need to do is be conscious of the Office of Environmental Protection report around this. I found that a very welcome report. I was speaking to officials last week, and they're working through the recommendations from that, and we'll be doing a further consultation in relation to a number of matters arising from that. One of the biggest issues that arose from that report was an extended season, because people are, well, today perhaps are out swimming, but it's not. It's before the start of the official, the designated season. And that's what we'll do. We'll take this forward. The important announcement today is in terms of those 7 sites, but that's not to say that all's fine. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and what we need to do is we need to address the pollution of our waterways, whether that's from sewage or from agriculture, and that's something obviously I've been talking about today and I'm determined to do.
Finnegan.
Gurmayagat, Concordia. The Minister will know that Lough Neagh for a long time has been a vital amenity area for local communities, and of course bathing activity there has been significantly impacted by poor water quality due to blue-green algae in recent years. Can I ask the Minister, given recent instances of blue-green algae on Lough Neagh, what progress his department is making to address the benefits for local communities?
So the department is continuing to implement the Lough Neagh Action Plan. It's really important that we do that, but more specifically in relation to this question on bathing water sites and Lough Neagh, as you have raised it, amongst the 7 new sites being formally identified is Northern Ireland's first inland site at Raiswood on Lough Neagh. The primary focus of the bathing water programme is to provide good public health advice to bathers. This is particularly important for Raiswood with the ongoing blue-green algae problem. As part of the Executive's approved Lough Neagh Action Plan, my department leads on an interagency group to ensure that timely advice is provided to swimmers at this site. and that's an important intervention that we're making around this. A lot of work we need to do to improve water quality, but it's important also that we take action in relation to bathing waters.
Okay, thank you for that. Move on to topical questions. The Minister, call Patsy Madlone.
And Corlia. Could I ask the Minister, in regard to the, well, not recently announced SBRI initiatives, Minister, could you give us an update on progress, specifically with regard to Lough Neagh, please?
No problem. So there's a number of SBRI initiatives particularly relevant to Lough Neagh. One's phase 2 of sustainable utilisation of livestock slurry. That is ongoing and that's proven itself to be very successful, and it's really important that we're conscious of that, and I'll be sort of saying a bit more about that next week in the run-up to the Balmoral show. The other issue is in relation to the monitoring of blue-green algae blooms, and that's UK Space Agency. That's ongoing. There's another issue in terms of a number of firms that we have appointed to explore how we can manage those blooms. There is presentations due from them in the next number of weeks to see how that is progressing. It's important that we take all these initiatives forward, but there is fundamental interventions that we do need to make in relation to agriculture and wastewater infrastructure as well, so we can address the flow of that excess nutrients into the loch.
Mr. McLone.
Thank you for that concise view of the various SBRI initiatives, Minister. Minister, specifically with regard to the sustainable use of livestock slurry, can you expand a bit on that, please, as to what success for you, in fact, means?
So we have 2 firms appointed, and potentially a third is going to be coming online in relation to that, and that's obviously providing a solution for the farming community where there's excess slurry and manure on site, and that's what's moving it into, particularly into a resource that we can use and potentially export and also generate energy from. There's a number of sites in place. There's one just near us in Dundonald, which I visited just recently. I don't know whether the committee has visited that yet, but if you haven't, I would encourage you to do it because it is a very good example of how we can move things into a better place in relation to the management of livestock slurry.
Please, Bradley.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the Minister for his answers so far, but can the Minister advise farmers who are losing land due to the A5 what they should do with their entitlements if they no longer have enough land for each entitlement? Do they sell them, or will the Department look at a special circumstance? As the road build is currently being a court challenge, will there be an opportunity to the Minister to look at this again?
Minister.
I'm conscious of these issues because I've received written Assembly questions in relation to this, and I'm also aware of the vesting process and the ongoing legal challenge. If there are specific circumstances that are in relation to this, I would encourage the member to write to me about that, and I can give you a more definitive reply in relation to this. But we also then have to respect the rules in terms of an active farmer definition.
Mr. Bradley.
Mr. Speaker, with the entitlement deadline day looming, will the Minister convene an urgent information meeting for all impacted farmers to advise on the matter, or has he visited any farms recently?
This is a matter that is primarily led with by the Department of Infrastructure around this, and I'm aware of the concerns in relation to this. I'm also aware of an ongoing legal issue around this, and I'm just conscious of that. We will discharge our responsibilities as a department in line with our duties in the law.
Honourable McMurray.
Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Minister. Minister, can I ask for an update on actions your department is taking on tackling climate change?
So there's a significant number of actions that we are taking and have to be taken across government and society. There's many sectors in relation to greenhouse gas emissions that sit outside my department, particularly in relation to both energy and transport, for example, and they are reflected within the Climate Action Plan, which is with the Executive, so I can go out to consult on that. Once I get agreement from the Executive, I will engage with a 16-week consultation on the Climate Action Plan, which is from 2023 to 2027. Included within that is actions in relation to, for example, agriculture, waste, land use change and forestry cover, which sits with my department. But beyond just that, in terms of implementation of the climate change legislation, I have the Green Growth Strategy, which is also sitting with the Executive for agreement. This is about giving the opportunities for good green jobs and also about restoring our environment. And it's important we're able to move with that so we can grasp those opportunities for Northern Ireland. I'll also be going out very soon to consult on the Climate Adaptation Plan for Northern Ireland and be interested in views in relation to that. And lastly, the Sustainable Agriculture Programmes continue to be rolled out by my department. That's in the context that climate change is the biggest risk to farming. It is important we give farmers the tools to be able to respond to that and to build resilience, and there's so much we can and should do in relation to climate change.
Mr McMurray.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Minister. Also, Minister, what engagement is your department and yourself having with the UK and Irish governments in relation to the same subject of climate change?
I have been engaging quite heavily with my counterparts in both the UK Government and in the South. I raised this issue with the Prime Minister at the British Irish Council in Edinburgh late last year. I've also engaged with my colleagues in DEFRA and also the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero. I also recently met Darragh O'Brien, who's the Minister for Climate, Environment and Energy, and there's significant liaison occurring across the UK and Ireland. There's significant challenges ahead in relation to climate change. The Met Office projections over the years and decades ahead are dire. They do fill me with lots of worry. So now is not the time to turn our backs on climate action and also net zero. I take my advice from respected scientific evidence-based organisations such as the UK Climate Change Committee and the IPCC, not X or vested political interests. The CCC report outlines that there is real benefits from energy decarbonisation, real benefits in terms of energy security and lower bills. And it's important that we continue this journey so that we avoid situations where we continue to push people into fuel poverty. We're an economy that's looking outwards, and we're an economy that's looking towards our European partners in terms of collaboration around these issues. Now is the time for action, not to reduce our ambition for this place and for climate change more broadly.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, you are aware of ongoing issues facing communities in my constituency in the Killeshall and Granville areas with odours emanating from commercial sites. On a previous occasion when I raised that with you, you had indicated that you were putting in place a review of environmental governance in relation to those issues. Can you outline any progress in that and how things might be improved as a result of that?
Thank you, Colm. So the Northern Ireland Environment Agency continues to receive reports of odour relating to Granville Industrial Estate, particularly with respect to Granville Eco Park, which is an anaerobic digestion plant. I am aware of the concerns of local residents, and my inspectors within the Northern Ireland Environment Agency continue to work with the company and other permitted sites in the estate to see improvements in the control of potentially odorous emissions. My inspectors will continue to regulate the permitted installations in the Granville Industrial Estate to ensure permit conditions are complied with, and will take appropriate enforcement action in line with DAERA's enforcement policy where necessary. Granville Eco Park is working towards complying with an enforcement notice that NEA issued to the company on the 7th of March 2024 in relation to odours.
Margaret, in relation to the Northway issue, Killeshall, previously known as Northway, now Sawgrass Substrates, can you update on progress in relation to that, Minister?
I'm very aware of the concerns around that. I don't have anything to hand to me at the moment, but what I'll do is I will write to you, and if necessary we can meet to go over that. But I'm very conscious of the concerns from your constituents in relation to this. You adequately articulate them, and I'm happy to engage with you in relation to that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Minister. Can I ask the Minister why he has launched the consultation on the Nutrient Action Programme?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So last Thursday I launched a consultation in relation to the Nutrients Action Programme for Northern Ireland, and it's important I set out why I have just done that. It is a legal requirement to do it. We also should be aware of the Office of Environmental Protection's priorities for the forthcoming year. The Chair of the Office of Environmental Protection, Dame Glenys Stacey, recently outlined her priorities for the forthcoming year, and she said, and I quote, "I could sum up our priorities in 3 words: nutrients, nutrients and nutrients." This is a key priority for the Office of Environmental Protection, and it's a priority for me because it's a direct action from the Lough Neagh plan. A number of the actions within the plan, both to launch the consultation in relation to the Nutrients Action Programme, but also specific ones in terms of, for example, restricting the use of fertiliser with phosphorus, are directly arising from the action plan. This is about putting farming and our environment on a sustainable footing. Previous scientific study undertaken indicated that poor water quality was attributed to about 62% in relation to agriculture, 24% in relation to wastewater, 12% in relation to septic tanks. This Nutrients Action Programme, and I'll use the acronym of NAP, is about 62%. but I don't ignore the contribution that wastewater plays. Northern Ireland Water needs to step up, and I will be fair and unrelenting in tackling all polluters. But in relation to agriculture, it states within the consultation document that Northern Ireland agriculture is operating on a significant phosphorus surplus, and we need to tackle that. There's 28 proposals within the Nutrients Action Programme consultation, and they're firmly based upon science and evidence. And we would do well to look at the consultation and to consider the science and evidence behind that. Many of them, in terms of those proposals, have previously been trailed. I understand the importance of education and incentivication, and it is a key pillar of the Loughnane plan. But we also need stronger regulation and more enforcement if we are to seriously address the environmental catastrophe that's unfolding at Loughnane.
Michelle Guy.
Thank you, Minister. What will be the impact if the policy proposals outlined in the consultation are not proceeded with?
Minister.
So let me be clear to members that business as usual is not an option in Northern Ireland. If we don't proceed with the proposals set out within the Nutrient Action Programme, we are consigning Loughnane and many other water bodies across Northern Ireland to further deterioration and ultimately to ecological collapse. The longer we delay more stringent measures, the more will be required and more stringent measures will be needed. And the more costly the clean-up will be, not just for Loughnane, but for many water bodies across Northern Ireland. And I say this, and I've thought over this. The Nutrients Action Programme is key. The reputation of our agri-food industry is at stake. We're at a crossroads here in Northern Ireland. The Nutrients Action Programme is very practical proposals to turn things around. People often look to this place, and let's be honest, not with a sense of pride. They look to Stormont with frustration at the inability to take difficult decisions and to be able to turn things around. The Nutrients Action Programme is difficult decisions. I acknowledge that. I was at Loughnane in March of last year with the First Minister and Deputy First Minister, and I set out that difficult interventions will be needed. I will walk with the farming community every step of the way as we turn this situation around. But we need to grasp proposals and we need to proceed, because if we don't, we're facing into a very, very dire future for Northern Ireland. And I do not want to see the scenes that have unfolded for the last 2 years and again this year to be repeated for the rest of my lifetime. We've got to change course.
Tom Buchanan.
Mr. Speaker, Minister, a few weeks ago at the Agriculture Committee, I raised concerns with regards to lack of support for farmers along the A5, and you did indicate that you would be meeting with your ministerial colleagues, DFA and Finance, to discuss this issue. Has that meeting taken place, and what has the outcome been?
So I'm very conscious that the responsibilities around this sit with the Department of Infrastructure and Finance. I did, from recollection, I need to check the Hansard around this, so I would informally raise it with them. I haven't done that yet, but what I'll do is I'll take that up and make sure I do it this week.
Mr. Buchanan.
Minister, then, can you advise how much is being lost to single farm payment in single farm payment to the agriculture community by those losing land along the A5?
I woun't have that information to hand, but if I were able to gather it together, I'll write to you in relation to that.
Declan McAleer.
Minister, in the recent TB eradication targets that you set out, you aimed at half the current levels by 2040. That's 15 years away, and if that was the case, we still would be higher than the south of Ireland. Do you feel those targets are ambitious?
Thank you, Declan, for raising what is a key issue for me, and I'm glad you've raised it, because TB is a vital issue for the farming community in Northern Ireland, but also for my department. And I want to give thanks to all the stakeholders who have engaged in relation to agreement on the blueprint for the future around this. There's significant work that has been undertaken, led by the Chief Veterinary Officer within my department, and I'm very, very grateful for that. I'm also conscious that the issue of TB requires an holistic approach and has to be based upon the 3 pillars which were set out in the Chief Veterinary Officer's report late last year of people, cattle and wildlife, and I'm very committed to doing that. It's going to take a while to change course in relation to this. This is a significant issue that I inherited as Minister. I've been open and honest around the challenges associated with it, but we owe it to the farming community to drive down the level of infections within herds. The blueprint sets out a way forward that we can do that, and we will be consulting on a number of measures coming from that, particularly in relation to wildlife, over the time ahead. There's lots that needs to be done, and I want to thank the stakeholders for sticking with us so we can work together on that.
Mr. Maguire, quick.
Minister, you'll appreciate that the TB is a serious impact for farms economically and emotionally for farmers. I think of the reason about 20,000 cattle a year have to be culled as a result of this desperate disease. Minister, from looking at the plan, I think we're talking about maybe 8 years away or more before we actually start tackling the wildlife intervention piece of it. Minister, can you understand why you might stand accused of kicking the can down the road?
So I'm not kicking any cans down the road. What I'm doing is abiding by process and taking into account the previous outcome of the judicial review. And it's very important that we do that. Because there's one thing I'll do as Minister, I'll be honest with people around things. I'll not lead people up a garden path and make them feel as if something's going to happen when you know in your heart it isn't. So what we've got to do is we've got to follow the procedure, we've got to follow the science and evidence. We have to make sure we don't pick a mix of science and evidence. We have to be honest in relation to the situation as presented us, and then we have to consult upon that. And we'll do that at pace, but we'll do it right. And there's many measures that are set out within the blueprint. I know it's stretching for many people within my department, but also the farming community, but we owe it to them to be able to work ahead on those issues.
Member Secretaries, move to the next item of business. Point of order, Mr. Buchanan.
By a few seconds. I wasn't in my place, so apologies for that.
Thank you for that.